Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking one of the absolutely most fascinating business stories of the modern tech era. I want you to picture the year 2001. Dial-up tones are finally fading out, the internet's getting faster, and our pockets, well, they're filled with these clunky, utilitarian bricks playing polyphonic ringtones, right? We're all furiously T9 texting. Well, in that exact atmosphere, two absolute tectonic plates of the global economy collided. On one side, we had Sony, a total titan of global entertainment, and they're shaking hands with Ericsson, this pioneering juggernaut in telecommunications. At the time, this was billed as the ultimate tech power couple. It was a breathtakingly ambitious partnership, and it was designed to completely dominate the incoming mobile era.
But of course, that brings us to a massive, literally billion-dollar mystery. Why on earth did the seemingly invincible tech marriage dissolve? I mean, it's kind of wild to think about now, but how does a partnership with literally every conceivable advantage, we're talking unlimited capital, immense brand recognition, top-tier engineering talent, how does that just fall apart a decade later? Well, we're going to map out the sheer whiplash of this corporate relationship, from the soaring, money-printing heights of their honeymoon phase, all the way down to the devastating strategic friction that brought the whole shebang crashing down.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand the genius of this initial merger, you have to look at their radically different DNA. First, you had Sony. They were the very definition of a flashy, highly desired consumer brand. They understood design, they understood entertainment, and they knew exactly how to make us fall in love with our electronics. And then you had Ericsson. Now, Ericsson wasn't flashy at all. They were the rigid, hyper-reliable backbone of global telecom. They built the invisible networks, the antennas, the complex radio technologies that actually made mobile communication possible in the first place. Think about it like this. Sony knew how to talk to people, but Ericsson knew how to connect them. Together, they looked like an absolutely invincible, complementary force.
And you know what? For a while, that symbiosis was nothing short of spectacular. We enter the honeymoon phase. The energy around these devices in the early 2000s was incredibly upbeat, mostly because the synergy actually worked. They carved out this highly lucrative premium niche by combining three core pillars: groundbreaking music capabilities, state-of-the-art photography, and rock-solid communication. Think back to the tactile feel of those devices for a second. The satisfying physical slide mechanism, the heavy, deliberate click of a dedicated camera shutter button right on the side of your phone. Before this, phones were basically just for talking and texting. Sony Ericsson proved, for sure, that a phone could also be your MP3 player and your digital camera, all without dropping a single call. It was a real game changer.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how they achieved that premium status, because it wasn't just the raw technology at play here. It was a massive psychological hack. They didn't just glue a music player to a phone, they gave us a Walkman phone. Remember the W800? Absolutely iconic. And they didn't just add a generic camera lens, they gave us a Cyber-shot. By stamping these globally iconic, beloved Sony sub-brands right onto Ericsson's ultra-reliable mobile hardware, they created an instant shortcut for the consumer. You didn't even have to wonder if the music quality or the camera would be good, the name itself guaranteed it. This brilliant move created a fiercely loyal customer base and, unsurprisingly, wild financial success.
But, as we know, underneath the surface, joint ventures are notoriously difficult to execute over the long term, and a quiet rot was starting to set into the foundation. You essentially had a massive corporate duality going on here. Two headquarters, separated by over 5,000 miles and massive time zones. Just imagine the rapid, trend-obsessed heartbeat of a Japanese entertainment giant in Tokyo trying to perfectly synchronize with the methodical, infrastructure-first rhythm of a Swedish telecommunications firm in Stockholm. The result? Painfully slow decision-making. Every single major choice required endless consensus, effectively turning a potentially agile predator into a lumbering bureaucratic behemoth.
And in the tech sector, speed is literally survival. Because every decision required that endless boardroom consensus we just talked about, they were essentially wearing structural blinders. Sony Ericsson was the undisputed king of what we now call feature phones. You know, those beautiful devices with incredible physical buttons. But while they were busy managing the complexities of their own internal marriage, a sudden, violent, paradigmatic shift was happening right outside their windows. Software, touchscreens, and sprawling app ecosystems were erupting. And this new wave was about to render their beautiful hardware completely obsolete. Then, total external chaos hits. Apple drops the iPhone, rewriting consumer expectations literally overnight. Google unleashes Android, commoditizing the entire software landscape. And this brilliantly illustrates how these external market shifts drove a fatal wedge between Sony and Ericsson's strategic goals. In the face of this absolute disruption, what's really striking is just how wildly their visions diverged. Suddenly, they're looking at two entirely different maps for survival. Sony looks at this new world and realizes, hey,
We need to tightly connect our phones with our PlayStations, our movies, and our TVs. Ericsson, on the other hand, realizing the consumer phone business is rapidly becoming a brutal software war they simply do not want to fight. They prefer to retreat back to their highly profitable core business of telecom infrastructure.
Let's move to and see how this builds across the timeline, because the whiplash is just incredible. It perfectly encapsulates the dramatic rise and sudden fall of this tech marriage. 2001, we have the hopeful, aggressive merger. By 2006, they hit their absolute peak. Total feature phone dominance, practically printing money off their Walkman and Cyber-shot lines. But then, just 5 short years later, in 2011, the environment has completely collapsed around them. iPhones and Android devices have completely eaten the market, and that dual leadership structure simply cannot pivot fast enough to stop the bleeding.
So the crucial point is that 2011 is the year the divorce papers are finally signed. Sony realizes that to fight unified, hyper-focused ecosystems like Apple, compromise is basically a death sentence. So what do? They write a massive check, over €1 billion, to buy out Ericsson's 50% stake in the joint venture. Just like that, the era of Sony Ericsson is officially dead, giving birth to Sony Mobile. Sony realized they needed absolute freedom to fully integrate mobile into their own proprietary ecosystem without having to consult a partner whose interests were lying an entire ocean away.
It's a fascinating takeaway when you distill the whole story down. Joint ventures are incredibly powerful vehicles to capture a new market quickly by pooling superpowers, like brand power and telecom engineering. But as we clearly see here, capturing a market is definitely not the same as keeping it. To actually sustain dominance in a fast-moving tech environment, a company requires either extreme agility or total integration. The heavy, two-headed nature of a 50-50 joint venture simply cannot adapt fast enough to survive major paradigm shifts.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. Looking back at the spectacular rise and dramatic dissolution of this iconic tech marriage, it begs a really fascinating question for today's market. As we watch companies currently partnering up to tackle artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and autonomous vehicles, are joint ventures ever truly built to last in the modern tech landscape? Or are they always destined to be brilliant, temporary stepping stones on the path to total integration? It's absolutely a critical lens through which to view the future of technology. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.